Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Board of Education Policy Committee meeting. Today is Thursday, August 10th. Time's now 5:12 p.m. And with me this evening, I have board members Mary Ellen Flaherty Ludwig, also member Janine Randolph. And from central office, we have Ralph Valenzizi, Robert Pennington, Carol Wilshire Toth, and attorney Kimberly Bird Carolina. This evening's agenda is packed with a lot of information, and we're going to start with the approval of minutes. Was everybody able to read those minutes? Any changes on the minutes? Mary Ellen?
No changes. Looked very good. Clean minutes.
No
Janine?
changes for me, no.
Okay, so all in favor to approve the minutes, say aye, raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. That's unanimous approval. Next item on the agenda is public comments. I don't see anyone online for any public comments. We did get one public comment emailed to us, and that will be read and also put in public on the public notes records. Thank you. So with that being said, Ralph, if you can start the meeting for us, we're going to discuss different policies this evening.
Great. Thank you, Chairman Carpio, and welcome, board. So we're excited tonight to go through 4 different policies. 2 policies which Kimberly will cover for us, one which is new and one which is an update. And then Carol and Rob will also be covering 2 policies, one which is new and one which is an update. So with those, the 2 policies that we'll start with Kimberly that talk about visitors. There's been some adjustments to them, and I know she'll be able to explain it. Kimberly, I'll actually pop that up for you on the screen. And then the second policy will be our new breastfeeding policy. So the visitor policy is actually just an update to a current policy that we have in place. And with that, I'll turn it over to Attorney Bird Carolina.
Hello, thank you so much, Rob.
Sure.
And so I don't know if you were going to put the visitors one up. I have printed my copy of it, so I can just begin talking. And so with the visitors policy, in March of this year, early March, on March 3rd, Governor Lamont signed into law Public Act 25-1, which addresses immigration enforcement activity in the schools. And so under this policy, superintendents they needed to designate an administrator at the school who would, I guess, interact with these enforcement officers should they come to the school. And then the new law also directs boards of education to update for the current school year their school security and safety plans, which under existing law, they must be developed each year and based on standards by the Department of Emergency Services and Public Protection, including protocols for interacting with the federal immigration authorities. And so with the new policy, you'll see on here like that first full paragraph, and then the language that's in red there. Oh,
I'm sorry.
Yep, that page there. Yep. The language that's in red, that would be in addition to that particular paragraph, which talks about the Board of Education encourages visits by citizens, taxpayers, and parents to all the buildings. And then in order to promote a safe and productive educational environment for all the students and staff, the board requires visitors to receive prior approval from the school principal or their designee before being permitted to enter into the school building. And then the board, through the administration, reserves the right to limit visits in accordance with administrative regulations and to limit any disruption to the student's education. And really, that line right there will play into the next policy that we're going to discuss, which is the breastfeeding policy. But keeping with this policy, on the next page there, you'll see the highlighted language there. That would be information that is new, and that's pertaining to the language about the federal immigration officers showing up at the buildings and how they are to interact with them. And then in the regulation just adds in that same number 12 that's in the policy, I think it is, or
Yep.
number 12 in the regulation is that same highlighted language that talks about what happens in the event a federal immigration officer arrives at the school.
Okay, can we go back to that first section in yellow? Well, first section.
Yep.
Because we're trying to set up the pages. Everything was moving a little bit too fast. So the gray section, Ralph, please.
Sure.
That talks about the state.
Oh,
And then if Janine or Mary Ellen had any questions. Mary Ellen, you're muted.
Thank you for slowing that down a little bit. As I read through this, what strikes me is that we are conforming to this right now. We do have a designated person, and I'm just going to ask, am I correct in that impression that we have?
That each school has a designated person?
Each school has a designated person and a protocol in effect.
there is a protocol in effect for each school building. I know Dr. Estrella sent a protocol out to the administrators with information about who they need to contact should a federal immigration officer arrive at the building.
So would I be accurate in saying that it's a good thing that Governor Lamont is addressing this, but in fact, we have been abiding by this way of thinking, and we've had that in order, and it's just another encouragement to know that we're on the right track. Is that correct?
I would say so. And yeah, I mean, we had our protocol in place. I want to say, and Ralph, correct me if I'm wrong, if I remember correctly, I think that, we put a protocol in place early in the year and at the start of the new year, really, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
January.
Yep. Yeah, I think it was, as soon as we came back from breaking. So.
Yes, and to answer some of the public's concern is this isn't, we are following laws and regulations. This isn't us trying to fight against any type of ordinances coming down from DC. It's just, making sure that schools are in a safe spot, the children are in a safe spot, and that we don't disrupt the staff and the children while at school too much. But it's not anything else but that.
Right.
And Chairman Carpy, if I can say, this is actually this is what our attorneys are actually telling us we should be changing our policies to. We happen to already have put it into practice, but they're saying that you need to really kind of actually have this within your policy.
So the exact words in the policy. I do have a question about the reason behind the red line and to limit any disruption to students' education. That seems implied. Why was it necessary to add that?
So I think Attorney Bird Caroline will explain that a little more in the second policy. It just happens to be a coincidence that that ties to our second policy that we're going to be talking about tonight.
Right.
But if we didn't have the second policy, would we still have added this, or is that?
I think probably. I think so. Yeah.
Okay, just it clarifies that our concern is any sort of disruption to the individual students learning that day. That's the concern, and we put it in more clear language. Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
Okay. And then did you want to look at the highlighted language as well?
Yes, please. Janine, are you okay? Any questions?
I'm good at the moment, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. And then in the
I find it interesting that they've spent, quite a few words explaining that whoever might come, that it might not be just what we consider ICE right now. It could be any number of people, but representing the United States in some way. So I'm understanding that is necessary because it might be someone other than something on their shirt saying ICE, so that's how I'm understanding that.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
I would have that same understanding in looking at this language as well.
Thank you.
Okay.
And then in the administrative regulations, that I think that same highlighted language appears in number 12 of the regulation.
I'm good here too.
I'm good.
Okay.
We'll move on to our next policy, unless Chairman Carpio, did you want to take a specific vote on this to move it forward, or wait till the end, or?
No, we can do them individually. So a motion to approve policy 1011 and 1011A, policy and regulation, visitors and observations in schools.
I make a motion that we
Thank you, Mary Ellen.
put this forward.
Seconded by.
Second.
Thank you, Janine. So I guess we're all in favor to move it to the full board. Thank you.
Moving it forward.
Our second policy is focused on breastfeeding.
The second policy is this is the new policy. It's the breastfeeding policy, and so and I'll explain. Remember, we had that red language from the first policy, and I'll explain that. In with this particular policy, with the breastfeeding policy, we wanted to put something in place. We're committed to moms have to come in, and our breastfeeding parents who have to come in, and they need a space to breastfeed. But we wanted to also put some parameters in place, right? I mean, we don't want we wanted to make sure that it's not going to be disruptive to the students or to the staff or anything like that. And so, and I'll just give like an example. For instance, like we wouldn't expect that it would happen. Someone would have the need to breastfeed like in an open space, like in the cafeteria, the school cafeteria, where students are passing by, or in a classroom where students are passing by. We have designated spaces for breastfeeding parents. And so this policy gives the purpose, our commitment. It states what our commitment to breastfeeding, but also, the purpose of the policy, and it has some definitions as well. And also it talks about, having the availability of an optional private room, and then some training, and then who they need to contact as a resource if they have the need to use this private space for breastfeeding. And so we wanted to update and put the language in the visitor policy, that red language there, and to limit any disruption to the student's education, because that kind of is synonymous or goes hand in hand with the breastfeeding policy as well.
Is it me, or am I not seeing the red language?
That was from the
From the
I'm
previous?
sorry, it was from the visitors policy. So we wanted to have that in the visitors policy,
Mhm.
to put that there because it still goes kind of hand in hand with the breastfeeding policy as well, because we may have parents that come in that may need to breastfeed.
Mhm.
And so we want to make sure that we provide them with the space. We want to make it as least as disruptive, I'm sorry, to any students at the school. And so that's why we updated we wanted to put that in the visitors policy because we know the visitors policy will pertain to anyone that comes to our school, maybe a parent that may need to breastfeed, while they're there.
Mhm.
So just speaking practically, it sounds like it's welcoming breastfeeding in a situation. For example, if a parent comes in for a parent conference and the parent is in that parent conference, in usually parent conferences are in, usually, not always, but usually they're in a little office or something like that. And that would be fine. The
Right.
Person does not have to ask for a private room.
Right.
And that's why we're normalizing. That would be fine. But if it would seem unusual to have a parent conference if a classroom was ongoing. But if that ever were to happen, in that situation, if there's an ongoing classroom or kids are coming in the room, in that situation, we're sensitive to the needs of the students that are learning.
Right. Right.
And I like the fact that we're respecting, moms that are breastfeeding and giving them the option of a private room and not, just a place where they may feel a little uncomfortable.
Right.
Right.
Right,
Yeah.
very good.
Yeah, and I probably should jump into for, not speaking for Mrs. Fayois, but from a operations and building standpoint, this has all been put into place
Mhm.
in all the
Mhm.
buildings operationally. So, there's protocols that are in place. That there are spaces in every one of our buildings.
Okay, that's good to know. And
And all the staff are aware of all of that too, you said?
Yeah, I believe so. I believe they've gone through well, I think the administration stuff is going through it to staff the protocol and the whole process. Yes.
once, assuming we're all going to approve this, once it is approved, will this policy be available or put out to all parents? So I'm just wondering how we're going to communicate that we are open and wanting to normalize breastfeeding, but just sensitive to students who are actually in class learning.
Okay.
How are we going to go about sharing that information?
Well, would we really share it? Because we don't share all of our policies with the public. It would be listed on our policies if they needed to see it. But you know what I'm saying? Like,
I do know what you're saying, but I feel in this case, in this particular policy, it would benefit young parents to know, in some way put a marker on this so that they would know that there is a policy and that the policy is recognizing, normalizing breastfeeding. So I just see this as a question that might not be asked, but that everybody should be aware of. We're forward looking on this.
Yeah, I know that in practice we've already put this into practice in our buildings, similar to the visitors policy that you talked about. One of the ways that I can bring this back to cabinet is how do we actually communicate this? Because as Chairman Carpio mentioned, it's we don't do this for every policy, but it may be
I understand
that would make sense for principals at the beginning of the school year to be able to release when they're releasing other information, just so that there's some communication to parents, or there is probably a logical way of getting that information out to everybody at a time that makes sense. And it may not be just directly from central office. It may be, maybe at the building level. But what I can do is I can do a follow-up and, check with with cabinet and report back on maybe a good means of actually communicating this information out in a way that makes, that's logical and makes sense for everybody to get the message that this is in place.
Okay, I like that idea, and perhaps, I mean, just throwing this out, the parent group might be able to spread that information also.
Mhm.
So that is my concern, that I'm in favor of this policy, but I would like to be more confident that all the teachers who would be conducting, usually a parent conference that someone might come in, would be aware of it, and that the young parents would also be aware of it.
Janine, any questions?
I don't have any questions on it. I was just weighing on my mind as far as making it public or not, bringing it out to the public. But the policy itself, I think, is positive. I think it's good to have it written down and that it's known, and, it should be comfortable. People should be comfortable coming into schools with that in mind.
Thank you. All right, if no more questions, I need a motion to move the breastfeeding policy 4049 to the full board.
So moved.
Thank you. Moved by Janine, seconded by Mary Ellen, and all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oh, Janine said yes.
Aye.
Thank you, Janine. Okay, next policy on the agenda is policy 5011 and 5011A, policy and regulation regarding high school graduation requirements.
And Attorney Bird, Carolina, thank you so much. I mean, if you need to run, the next two policies are good for
Thank you.
Rob and Carol. So thanks.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
So I'm going to have Carol talk through. Ralph, you'll share the policy.
Yeah. I'm going to put up the graduation requirements first.
Sure.
Excellent, thank you. So when we think about our graduation requirements, we really think about our scholars in terms of cohort. And I know we have information here in the policy that is stated, and I'm wondering if also I can share my screen in a moment, Ralph, with what the actual plan of study looks like. Would that be okay as well?
Sure.
Great. So when we talk about our graduation requirements, we think of our classes in terms of cohorts. Our cohorts are established by when our scholars are coming into the school system in terms of when they're supposed to graduate. So when we think about next year, we think about our cohort 2026. Those will be our graduating seniors next year in June. When we look to that, we look at some of the changes that have happened. And one of the changes that has happened for next year, we talk about overall graduation requirements being 25. That is the same as this year. But one of the changes is that the capstone experience will no longer be required. Instead, it will be a related course. And I'm going to show that to you specifically when I show the plan of study as well. And all of the other requirements are actually going to be remaining the same. I think that makes it a lot easier for our scholars and families. Often scholars and families have the lens on graduation requirements starting in 6th grade, which is wonderful. Am I able to change my screen now, Ralph, to the plan of study?
Sure. I guess, was there anything else that was basically the change in the policy?
Yes.
So yes. So
Right. So that was the change, is that the cohort 2026 will no longer have the capstone experience. Instead, it'll be a full credit of a related course, which means there will be 4 related credits for cohort 2026 relative to the overall graduation requirement.
Okay. Right. And you should be able to share now.
Great. Thank you. So I'd like to just show this particular view. I think many of our scholars and families are familiar with this view. Are you able to see plan of study cohort 2026?
Yes.
So speaking about next year's class, we look at two ways.
Yes.
We look at the 25 overall credits, and then we look at what we call our distribution credits. Our distribution credits have remained the same. There are no changes there. You'll see the humanities total are 10. And as we move down the line, our STEM credits are 9. We have our PE and health credits are 2. And then, as I said, our capstone and our related credit courses, I should say. And again, that capstone is going to change to related courses. Then I wanted to take us over to 2027. So as we look at our cohort 2027, we're thinking about our current sophomores. 2027 and beyond is the same relative to our courses, no capstone required, but there's an important distinction in this particular class, which is the reason why we have cohort 26 and cohort 27 and beyond, as you'll see here. So as you'll look, when we go down here to related courses, there is a financial literacy requirement for the class of 27 and beyond. And what that simply means is they're going to take a 0.5 class in a financial literacy category. That could be personal finance, principles of personal finance, and so on. And those classes are designated for us in our program of study. We have a certain page that tells us which courses satisfy those requirements. The reason why I wanted to show these particular plans of study this evening is because our scholars and families and you all are well familiar with this particular plan of study, what it looks like. And you know that this is the document that the school counselors work with their scholars and families. And it's a document that's really well received. So I wanted to see if anyone had any questions that I could answer relative to the graduation requirements, the cohorting, distribution credits.
So the removal of the capstone and the addition of that financial requirement, is that through the state, or is that how is that decided?
So I'll jump in. The financial literacy requirement is a state requirement for graduation that came into effect. I mean, it's going with that cohort, but we've started in building that in, I believe it was last year. And then the capstone was an adjustment. So the capstone was put in as a requirement for graduation, and then it was removed as a requirement for graduation. We still have it as a opportunity for students to share mastery-based learning as an option. So it's not that a student can't do that, but it's not a requirement for graduation. And that was a shift at the state level as well.
Oh, that was a shift at the state level and the local. As you were speaking, I thought it was only local, but it's state.
No, if the state still required it to graduate, we could not make that shift. We would not have the ability to do that. So they made the shift, and then we followed suit.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Do we know why that it's gone in this direction?
I don't want to speculate, but I would just think that there have been a lot of requirements for graduation, and school districts across the state have to implement those. An example would be the financial literacy course. We had some courses that would meet that requirement, but not all students took it.
Mhm.
And so now, like, we've had to adjust, and it just means that our program of study and our course of action for our students has to shift, or a student won't be able to graduate. And so it impacts the number of teachers, it impacts the number of courses that can be offered. So when you put in an unfunded mandate, there are unintended consequences to that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's important to note also that after our cohort of 2026 graduates, we're going to be having our class of 27 plus, and we'll all have the same requirements. There won't be a difference between our cohorted classes, and I think that will help streamline the process as well.
Carol, if I may ask a question on the physical education requirement.
Mhm.
It said 2, physical education and health.
Mhm.
And as far as the physical education, does that mean over the high school years, there's only a requirement for one semester each year? I mean, how much? It's not every week
Sure.
of their high
In
school.
other words, what does the breakdown look like? So what that
Thank
looks
you.
like is a scholar has to take 2.5 courses of PE over the course of their 9th to 12th grade journey. And the same with health. That would include Health 1 and Health 2. All of the courses I mentioned are 0.5 courses. We no longer
I
have
see.
0.25 system, which makes it a lot easier. And so, yes, but I will tell you that the nice thing is that if a scholar wants to get into a PE class, if there's a space to and they can, then they're able to as well.
But in general, it a student would take one semester of PE,
Yes.
not the whole year.
Well, not typically, they're not really scheduled that way, but if they were scheduled that way, it could happen. But they just have to earn 1 credit while in their high school tenure for PE.
So it's really 2 semester
2
classes.
semesters
Yeah.
at any time during the 4 years.
Anytime across the 4 years. And it's the same for
Okay.
health. You have health 1 and health 2.
All right, that's helpful. I was just in a wellness meeting and we were trying to figure out how many hours of physical education that the high school kids had. All right, that's very helpful.
Going back to the finance class, did we already have that class, or did we have to create a new class and get new staff? How does that work?
So we have a couple courses that would meet that requirement. Our schools in our program of study have created some new courses that will also meet that requirement. An example is one of the courses for next year will be a financial math course that will be able to meet that requirement. So the answer to your question is yes, and yes, we have courses that meet the requirement, and schools are looking to add in another course because for different reasons, but it's a yes and.
And the staff?
Well, so
That's what I was going to ask.
an example, our financial literacy courses for the most part live in our business department. And a financial math course is not taught by a business teacher, but a math teacher. So they're being creative in how they can find different ways to offer courses that will meet the financial literacy requirement in their schools.
Could I just push that a little bit more, Rob? Will there be a state test to see what the students have learned, or is that just
No.
very local at that point once they've had the course?
The only state assessment that we give in high school is the SAT, and then we give PSATs as well, but the SAT is really the only state assessment that we give.
Okay, thank you.
And because it's not an elective anymore, are we adding more time slots?
The schools have been adding more courses, like you can't just offer one section of a course that meets that requirement. They have to offer more because the students that will be graduating in 2 years, everyone will have to have taken a financial literacy course. So yes, they've been, and this year's cohort and next year's cohort, they don't need that requirement to graduate. But after that they will. And so they've been planning, because with this year's group of freshmen, last year's group, they're really mapping that out so that to make sure, because what we don't want to have happen is a student gets to senior year and they have not taken financial literacy, and now their prospect to graduate is in jeopardy.
Thank you. Janine?
No, that sounds good to me. I like the financial literacy. I mean, the kids need it we don't get anything else. So I see why we're going in that direction, or thinking why we should go in that direction.
Mhm. Okay. Mary Ellen, good.
Yes, just one more question. Will there be situations where that course is folded into another course, and so a section of another course will have that, or does it have to be its own financial literacy? Is that the
It has
requirement?
to be it has to be its own course.
All right, so I get that. So then a math teacher can teach that, but that's its own course.
It
It's not
has to
just
be it has to
a
be
couple
its
chapters
own
in.
course that meets the requirements of financial literacy. It cannot be folded into a course. It cannot be a different course that they bring in components of financial literacy. It has to be its own financial literacy course.
Okay, I appreciate that clarification.
Okay. All right, with no more questions, I need a motion to move 5011 and 5011A policy and regulation, high school graduation requirements to the full board.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, thank you, Mary Ellen and Janine. All in favor, say aye. Raise your
Aye.
hand.
Aye.
Thank you. So that's a unanimous move. And our final policy for the evening is going to be 5014 and 5014A, policy and regulation to improve completion rates of the free application for FAFSA.
And I know that, like I said, I'll turn it over again, but I know this is something, once again, that's been in practice, but it's a policy that we need to have in place as well. So with that, let me share my screen and I'll turn it over to Carol and Rob.
All right. So under this policy, it's the FAFSA application policy. And ultimately, there is, starting with the graduating class of 2027, it is, and I think that we have, can you scroll down a little bit, Ralph?
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that, yeah, okay, perfect. You can stop there. We have, so we're adding this in now, so we put it for 2025, but we have that either students completed a FAFSA, or they completed completed and submitted to a public institution of higher education an application for financial aid, or completed a waiver. And that was the third piece I wanted to make sure of it that you could see. And this is something that our schools have been really working on around FAFSA completion. They've had, the state has had FAFSA challenges. Brian McMahon won an award for their FAFSA completion rates. And so this is something that it is, they're really looking to increase. And so part of the policy is around making sure that we are tracking this and that we report to the board what our participation rate is, or our completion rate is, every year. And then the other part of the policy is that we are looking to improve our rates year over year. And so it's really like having a team look at what are some of the challenges and successes, what are some of the next steps, and then also looking at tracking data and really trying to help students who might be struggling to complete FAFSA. And so then there are, there's also incentives that can be provided and so on and so forth around that work. But that is something that has been coming for over the last couple of years, and we have been doing this work as a district. And I think Brian McMahon receiving the FAFSA completion award, which I think it might have been last year or it was 2 years ago. I can't remember off the top of my head. But it is something that the state has pushed, and so that we are working with our students around.
Yes, there was a lot of enthusiasm with the assistant principals, I think, in getting that rate up. A lot of
Yes.
contests, just a lot of enthusiastic, uh, you know, problem thinking of how to get everybody involved and get that completed, which is no easy task. It's formidable. It's not a one-page document. I've had 2 children fill that out, my own children, and I'm sure any parent knows it's not an easy thing.
What is the benefit to the district of having FAFSA done? Because I have a concern with it. Like, I know that it's very hard to get everybody to fill it. Some families feel they don't need to, other families need to, and other families can't. So my question is, what's the benefit of having the FAFSA done for the district?
I think the benefit of it is threefold. I think the benefit is it's a mindset of post-secondary planning. So whether it's the FAFSA or whether the scholar and family look for financial aid or do a waiver and then do some alternative forms to address your concern about potentially documentation, it's really opening up the conversation with families and scholars to say, don't sit back based on fear or concern, but to say, let's move forward and see how we can help you realize what your dreams are based on what you want them to be. So I think that's some of the benefit. I think another benefit potentially is to our graduation rates as well, because we get that post-secondary planning in place as soon as possible and work with each scholar and family on an individual basis. We do a lot of FAFSA work in a lot of different ways through, as was stated, the AP support, through our RISE network, through our school counselors. It's really becoming a very normalized process. And part of that process is doing the waiver, but also potentially doing other forms and other ways to get kiddos into their post-secondary opportunities, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think that, Diana, one piece that you mentioned is, there are families who can't complete it, and there are other families who don't want to complete it. And I think that's going back to the 3 components. It's either completed a FAFSA or completed or submitted an application for financial aid or completed a waiver. The waiver piece, I think, is a factor. I mean,
And what information is needed for a waiver? Because if a family doesn't want to fill a FAFSA and is not comfortable or feeling safe with doing the waiver or an application for financial aid, what is the information needed for the waiver? Like, I'm not seeing a waiver, so I can't even.
Yeah, I believe I'm not completing FAFSA, and it's not we can give you a sample of the waiver. I think that'll be important. We'll give you a sample.
So just to piggyback on that, if the waiver doesn't require any more information than the name of the person, then that would probably be something parents would be willing to fill out. But if it documents other things,
well, and if you scroll
might
up,
be problematic.
If you scroll up, I want to highlight one piece because so it can't say much, and I'm going to tell you why. Right here, if you look under honor after March 15th of each school year, principal, counselor, teacher may complete the waiver on behalf of any student who's not satisfied, as long as they have shown a good faith effort to contact the family.
I didn't see that before.
So so if they are going to sign the waiver, the school is going to sign that waiver. It can't say anything but a student's name. It would almost say like, this is a waiver completing the FAFSA, and then there would be the name and that's it, and then a place to sign.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Yep.
That could also, I don't know, that might run into something too, because it's in good faith, and we would hope that you know, just because we need to meet numbers, that the waiver is not going to be filled out and signed just to be filled out and signed. Sorry.
Well,
know,
but
trying to
but
say.
the waiver wouldn't help our numbers. I just want to be able to say that because we're trying to part of the goal is to increase completion rates.
All
So
applications, yeah.
a waiver doesn't increase our completion rates. So I just think that that's an important thing to share.
Janine, before I say something.
No questions. I'm fascinated by the FAFSA because it's in my future. So
Good luck with that. I've done it 3 years in a row, fourth one coming up.
yeah, I'll see how this all goes.
It's so much fun. I've done it for 2 children. Great.
Fantastic.
Yes, I agree. It is not fun to do.
To be honest, I think I would rather table this one, only because I think we may need another run through and more conversation on it. Because, now that I'm thinking about it, I don't know. I guess I don't know, don't understand really putting 2 and 2 together, how being a requirement for graduation is as important. Like, I guess that's what I was questioning. What does the district get out of it besides everything that Mrs. Wilshire told us? But it also sounds like something that all teachers and counselors do anyway. Like, I think I'm missing something. Maybe it's me.
I mean, it is a step tied to post-secondary education. And I think that it is in an effort to promote post-secondary education. This is a way to do that. If students are completing the FAFSA, it can give them access to more opportunities. And so that I think is the rationale from the state of Connecticut. So
So here, Rob, this is the problem I have with it at this first
Read through.
thought. The problem is you're putting it under a requirement for graduation. And then if you read it carefully, well, maybe not, because you can have a waiver. So if the thought is we're improving our numbers because the student thinks it's a requirement for graduation, I can see that as kind of a carrot for trying to get a higher number. But I feel that there's something not quite right here, because if you have the 25 credits for graduation, you don't get waivered for those credits. So this just seems like an add-on that could be and has been encouraged by the state in other ways other than putting it as a requirement for graduation.
And I would say to think of it as a requirement to programming, not so much as a requirement to graduation, because the theory is, from the state perspective, that it's an access opportunity point. And what they're really saying is, and as my former work as a school counselor, I can tell you, I would have families say to me, I'm not going to fill it out because I'm not going to qualify. I'm not going to get any funding. And I think part of that push is for an access point to say, fill it out, because you never know if you're going to get that funding, because there's a lot of people that really take themselves out of that particular application process and don't do it. And I think that's part of the push as well, to say this is an access point for funding. So just something to think about.
And if I can just chime in, but I will get clarifications too. My understanding that this is actually a state requirement at this point for us to have it. And like I said, as Rob mentioned, he was talking about 2027. It looks like I may have made a clerical error in this. I think it's at 2025. So Rob, I'll make that correction on the on on the actual policy itself. This may be worth tabling, but in that sense, let me go back and just make sure. But I am this is actually, I think, a state requirement that we actually put this into play. It's not a
It's not us doing this, and
Yes.
so it's something we have to put into place. But my understanding from and that's why I said it when I started, is I believe it's with the graduating class of 2027.
Yes. So, but we may be able to, once again, the question then becomes, we maybe want to look at this policy because we have to have this policy in place. How it reads, maybe another question, like I said, we may be able to look at exactly what that policy states may look a little bit different. So that's, I think, Chairman Carpio, if we want to revisit this, I think that's where we need to kind of go at. But let me get clarification, making sure that it is a state requirement, which I'm 99.9% sure it is. I do have to make that clerical correction for 2027. And at the same time, then we can see about having maybe a further conversation around, some of the concerns and that may be there, and how that can be, can the actual model policy be tweaked to be able to match what we believe as a community, to be able to still meet the state requirement.
Okay. I concur with tabling it, and I appreciate your further investigating it and making sure all our numbers are accurate.
All right.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so motion to table.
So move, Randolph.
Thank you, Janine.
A second.
Seconded by Mary Ellen. So we're going to table 5014 and 5014A policy and regulation to improve completion rates for the free application for FAFSA. And with that, thank you for all the information. There's a lot to discuss this evening. And I just wanted to thank the team for taking their time, for a long day and being here with us this evening. And with that, motion to adjourn. Thank you, Mary Ellen. All right. Good night, everyone.
Have a great evening, everyone.
Thank you so much, Carol.
Thank you.
Bye.
For everything, for the clarifications. Appreciate it.